Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing something a bit different, a real deep dive into just one source.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, though. A single Good Friday message from Colson Lin.
Exactly. And what makes this really interesting, especially for listeners tracking complex modern thinkers, is we're looking at it through the lens of Claude 3.7 Sonnets Analysis.
The one titled Analyzing Colson Lin's Good Friday Message, a Nietzschean deconstruction within a messianic claim.
That's the one. It really helps connect this tweet to Lin's bigger picture, from the four interludes.
Lin definitely has a way of, provoking thought. His takes are often unconventional, blending philosophy, culture. It's quite a mix.
Absolutely. So our goal today is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Really unpack what Lin's getting at here. And that the Claude analysis is going to be key. I think there's some real aha moments waiting. What's your initial read on how this fits into his wider project?
Well, it seems like he's tackling something huge and frankly paradoxical. He's deeply engaging with Christian tradition and its critiques, but also positioning himself, very uniquely in relation to it all.
Okay, let's dive right in. The first line. I am like Madonna for the human world outside contemporary popular music. Wow. Okay, unpack that for us. What's the immediate hit?
It's audacious, right? The self-positioning is immediate. He's not just saying he's known, he's claiming massive cultural impact, transformative impact beyond just one field. Madonna's influence stretched way beyond pop music.
Right, icon status. But the Madonna choice itself,
Yeah.
that feels deliberate, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just the whole boundary pushing thing, but the name, Madonna.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's almost certainly intentional. It immediately links him to a huge icon, but also subtly points towards the religious themes he's about to explore. It's a provocation from the get-go.
And then extending it to the entire human world.
Yeah, that hints at something much bigger than just being a cultural commentator, doesn't it? Maybe something messianic even.
Definitely sets a grand stage. Okay, but then, right after that boldness, he does this. Good Friday, as you might know, is about, I had to Google it. How'd you learn about it anyway?
Yeah.
This kind of feigned ignorance. What's the play here?
It creates distance, I think. Critical distance. He's talking about a core Christian event, but pretending he's unfamiliar. It lets him engage from an outsider's viewpoint. And that question, how'd you learn about it? That's interesting, too. It subtly questions how religious knowledge gets passed down. Is it real understanding or just osmosis?
Right. So he's questioning the very roots of how people hold these beliefs while positioning himself outside of it. Okay. And he pivots again, bringing in the Chinese idiom, eating bitterness.
Yay! Yeah. He says, have you ever heard of the old Chinese idiom, eating bitterness, before? That's sort of like enduring suffering with grace.
How does that fit in? It seems like quite a shift.
Well, he's bringing an Eastern perspective, right? Applying it to a Western religious idea. Eating bitterness is about resilience, enduring hardship with dignity. It's an alternative frame for the suffering in the Good Friday story.
So he's kind of acting as a bridge between cultures,
Yeah,
using an Eastern idea to look at Western suffering.
precisely. And then he adds that bit about himself. I am a spoiled prince compared to basically most human lives.
Which is interesting. Acknowledging privilege.
Right. It lets him connect to the universal idea of suffering, even while admitting his own experience might be different. It's a way to relate without falsely claiming hardship, maybe.
Okay, makes sense. Now, this brings us to what the analysis flags as the Nietzschean critique. This bit feels really central.
Yeah, he writes, usually we don't have holidays that commemorate a public figure's condoning of their own disempowerment. Actually, we don't really have that many public figures who we associate with disempowerment. Actually, you guys are all really, really, really weird.
That repetition of actually and really, really, really weird. What's he driving at?
It's very Nietzschean, isn't it? Echoes the Antichrist, where Nietzsche criticizes Christianity for, valuing weakness, flipping power dynamics on their head. Lin's pointing out how strange it is from a standard power perspective to celebrate someone embracing powerlessness.
So the takeaway is he's highlighting how odd Good Friday looks through that particular lens. That celebrating weakness clashes with how we usually think about heroes.
Exactly. The repetition just hammers home how unusual, how weird he finds it.
It does make you stop and think about the cultural assumptions baked into that celebration.
It does, though one could argue maybe celebrating that kind of disempowerment is the radical act against worldly power. But Lin doesn't really go there.
Right. He sticks with the Nietzschean angle, developing it further. What I thought was normal growing up, I'm referring to Christ's overall vibe, I now realize, is something highly idiosyncratic that's difficult for most beings that just want to prosper inside nature to fully process, realize, or now with modernity in full swing, contemplate.
That phrase, prosper inside nature, really jumps out.
Yeah, what's the significance there?
It sounds a lot like Nietzsche's will to power, doesn't it? The basic drive to assert oneself, grow, overcome. Lynn seems to be saying Christ's whole vibe, his ethic, goes against this fundamental human grain.
So the natural default is wanting to prosper, and Christ's message is this really unusual countercurrent.
That seems to be the idea. And he suggests modernity, our current world, makes it even harder to grasp that counter message. It amplifies that desire to just prosper naturally.
Okay. Then he throws out this alternative history idea, which is really provocative.
Yeah, the bit about social justice. Maybe the entire concept of social justice wouldn't even be parsable by Western culture, because the universal assumption was every being lands into whatever life we give them because of mistakes they made in their prior life. That's just the story of nature.
That's a huge claim. He's suggesting a kind of default karmic view.
Sort of, yeah. That maybe before Christianity's influence took hold, people just accepted hierarchy as a natural consequence, maybe of past lives or just the way things are. And in that world, our idea of social justice wouldn't even compute.
So Christian ethics aren't just a development, they're like an interruption.
Right.
A disruption that made social justice even thinkable in the West.
That's what he seems to be suggesting, that it introduced this radical, initially weird idea that became foundational later on.
Okay, following that, he offers this. Well, the analysis calls it a reductionist view of why Christianity appeals to people.
Right. Christianity, as you know, is about people seeking shelter under the umbrella of a divine figure's power, which manifested on earth in human form as human self-sacrifice. Christians indirectly want to venerate self-sacrifice because they correctly sense heroes can protect me.
That sounds very pragmatic, almost like a security measure.
It does, doesn't it? He boils down faith to a need for safety. People see Christ's self-sacrifice, they see a hero, and they sense protection. It's less about abstract belief, more about a perceived benefit, security.
It connects maybe to some of his other ideas, like the hollow earth theory about core insecurity.
Could be. It definitely frames faith in terms of seeking refuge under power.
Okay, so after all this deconstruction, this critique using Nietzsche, this pragmatic reframing, then comes the big twist.
The head turner, yeah.
He says, okay, so now I'm here with the message, let yourself be saved. Atheists don't want to hear it, but that's essentially what my philosophical writings amount to. How do we reconcile this? He tears it down, then claims to offer salvation.
That's the core paradox, isn't it? It seems contradictory. But I think he sees it differently. He's deconstructed the old framework, the traditional religious one, but he believes his own philosophical work offers a path to, well, salvation might be his word for clarity, understanding, escaping delusion, perhaps. It's salvation through reason, his reason, not faith.
So deconstruction and fulfillment, but on his own terms. It's salvation via his philosophy.
That seems to be the claim. It's certainly bold.
Okay, and he wraps up the message by drawing this final contrast. How many other human identities do we associate with self-sacrifice? Well, as we know, humans self-sacrifice in smaller and bigger ways as a matter of literal, everyday routine. In the Antichrist's logic, these humans are called chumps. In Christ's logic, they're brethren.
This brings it right down to earth, doesn't it? Everyday life.
Yeah. What's the point of this final contrast?
He's putting everyday self-sacrifice center stage, all those small acts people do, and he presents two ways to view them. The Nietzschean way, chump's weakness, or the Christian way, brethren, community, love. It's framed as a fundamental moral choice.
A choice between contempt and community, basically.
Yeah. And as the analysis notes, by identifying himself elsewhere as both the Second Coming and the Übermensch, Lynn kind of positions himself as someone who understands both sides of that divide and maybe even offers a way beyond it.
Right. So looking back at the whole message through the lens of the analysis, it really does capture that central tension in Lynn's work.
Absolutely. That constant back and forth between tearing down and, in some strange way, rebuilding or fulfilling. Metamodernism, that idea of oscillating between irony and sincerity, seems like a useful concept here.
And his idea of himself not as someone to believe in, but as a consequence.
Yeah, like his ideas are just an inevitable outcome for a world that's become, in his view, intellectually defenseless. And his notion of apocalypse
As the end of plausible deniability. not fire and brimstone.
Exactly. It's about a forced clarity, a revelation through reason, not destruction. He's trying to build this rational, messianic framework, positioning reason itself as divine, and himself as its messenger.
A second coming reframed as a purely rational event. It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
So this dive into just one Good Friday message from Colson Lin, especially with the Claude Sonnet analysis, shows incredible complexity. It touches on how we think today, how we reinterpret old traditions, what belief even means now.
Definitely gives you a lot to chew on.
For everyone listening, maybe think about this. How does Lin's whole approach here challenge or resonate with your own views on faith, on power, on what cultural figures even do? And what are the implications when salvation itself is presented not as faith, but as a consequence of reason?
Big questions. And delving deeper into Lin's own writings and that analysis we used would certainly offer more food for thought.